and as you can see, some is inclusive within the scripture reference of Ephesians 4. Does that make sense? Okay. 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 Were there any other questions or concerns that
I
you
don't
had?
think so.
Okay. All right. You ready to roll? Okay. All right. And let me know when you're good. Okay. Pastor Lattimore, thank you very much for meeting with me today. And we have with us Pastor Wilson Lattimore, who is the pastor of Chestnut Grove Baptist Church here in Athens, Georgia. And he's been kind enough to meet with me today to help me with this project as it relates to uh, focus on ministry paradigms as well as other focuses of ministry based upon the scripture reference of Ephesians 4:11 through 13, primarily dealing with the fivefold ministry. So, having said that, Pastor Lattimore, I have a few questions, around 10, 11, maybe 12 questions to ask you in this context. The first one being, from your ministerial context, uh, what overall paradigms of ministry are in operation here at Chestnut Grove Baptist Church?
I think if we use the Ephesians 4 as a reference, and where is the implication there is fivefold ministry, I would surmise that Chestnut is more likely a trifold ministry that would include pastor, teacher, evangelist, as opposed to being inclusive of prophet and apostle. So when I look at the way we function, and sort of based my understanding of even the fivefold as opposed to the trifold, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and just looking basically at, I don't, in my church experience and just in terms of practicing my understanding of even that passage is that I don't practically see in the utility of the prophet and the apostle function in the church today. So, and in my experience as a Christian, in my church experience again, I was saved um, and baptized in a Baptist church, and pretty much all of my church affiliation over my years as a Christian has been in the Baptist tradition.
Okay.
And I've not seen, the model of the apostle or prophet operating. And in addition, I suppose, in terms of my education and training, uh, which ministerial training, Masters of Divinity and Doctorate of Ministry from Luther Rice Seminary, and probably if we type schools, Luther Rice would probably be on the conservative end, and it's probably consistent with where I am in terms of the way I do ministry. So that's kind of the way I look at the way we function. Um, as I mentioned, we're not affiliated with any church association. We're not Southern Baptist. We're not General Missionary Baptist. We're not any of those. I think in the history of the church is 140 years old. Some of the time during those 140 years, the church have been affiliated with various associations. Most of the General Missionary Baptists have been historical, but in my association, the last 20 years, not. And so we pretty much function independent. And when I look at the overall paradigm for the church, um, I, it's really came from our own strategic plan. Uh, I used one of the professors at Luther Rice Seminary after having taken a course in strategic plan with Dr. King's help, Jerome King's help. We crafted our own strategic plan. And so when I look at the paradigm of this ministry, it's really based in that strategic plan. Um, and it's inclusive of mission, vision, values, goal areas, and strategies. And we, in 2007, is when we started that process. And it was a church-wide endeavor.
Okay.
And there were participation from members of the church. However, it was led by a strategic planning committee. And that's still functioning. There is a functioning strategic planning committee in the church today.
Okay. And when you mentioned your professor at Luther Rice, you mentioned Dr. Jerome King.
Mm-hmm.
That's the pastor of Mount Moriah,
That's
in
right.
Tucker, Georgia.
That's right.
Just for clarification.
Yep.
Sure
That is.
understood that's who it was. And when you mentioned that the church here at Chestnut functions more from a paradigm of a trifold
Yes.
ministry rather than a fivefold ministry, and that trifold ministry being pastor, teacher, evangelist.
Yes.
So, in other words, that's the predominant roles, if you will, or functions of officers in the church, ministerial officers in the church. All right.
I mean, basically, when I say that, we have personally as pastor of the church, I function as a pastor and teacher, primarily uh, pastor shepherd. Uh, but there's aspects of what I do is also involved evangelism as well. But the thrust of our mission is evangelistic, and therefore other minister associates are also encouraged to be involved in the work of evangelism.
Now, you made a comment that I picked up on. I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. When you mentioned the functions of the prophet and apostle, I know you just said that they don't those functions are not necessarily operable here at Chestnut Grove, but from your experience, from your perspective, just to clarify, do you see those roles functioning in the church universal today, or not?
I don't see that they function personally in the church today. I know there are few folk who wear those titles. I'm not real clear of what they do, uh, and really in terms of practicality, and I don't know how they are affiliated with. Is that a universal church function? Is that a local church function? Is an apostle function also as a pastor? The prophet, the pastor also function as a prophet. My notion is, or my understanding, as it relates to those particular offices, is the conservative view, the apostles primarily defined as the 12 apostles, and the apostle Paul.
Right.
Uh, and the prophets I see functioning primarily in the Old Testament prior to the completion of the canon. So I asked the question if they are speaking forth the word as it's already printed from the canon, then I can, in kind of far way, accept the notion of a prophet if they're preaching the word of God. Uh, but if we're thinking about them revealing things that may not be necessarily written in the canon, I have real difficulty with
Well, I appreciate you
that.
explaining.
Yes.
So, in regards to the trifold paradigm that functions here at Chestnut, pastor, teacher, evangelist, can you briefly explain, from your perspective, what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of those ministerial roles in the church?
Well, I think if we look at them broadly, I think sort of the strength is that other people um, primarily can serve in the role of pastor, although most in our tradition is there be a pastor in a lot of churches what they call senior pastor, but they have other pastors who also function. Right now, I'm the pastor. We have in recent history had an associate pastor, and a little bit of confusion around that because I think in Afro American tradition, in particular small and medium sized churches, I think we tend not to have staff, and I think a little bit of confusion around when we have an associate pastor, people trying to distinguish between how we differ in our role, and perhaps that's why some people, put the senior on top of, pastor, senior pastor, as opposed to youth pastor or pastor for other purposes. So I think pastor, uh, the strength is if there is one identified person who is shepherding the flock, uh, has the primary responsibility. Uh, the weakness is there's only you can only pastor shepherd X number. So to say that I am the pastor for 500 people really is challenging. So that needs to be helped. That needs to be other ways where shepherding is taking place. And in this church, I mean, we have other ministers who are assigned to shepherd X number of people, as well as deacons sharing in that role. So, so
Could you provide me an example of what that looks like?
yeah. Uh, let's see. We have um, probably about 20 other ministers who many were licensed at, at this local church. And then we have about 20 deacons. Say uh, Deacon, X has been assigned 5 families. And when that family unite with the church, then they are informed that this is your liaison in the church. Okay. And so they know it, and then on a monthly basis, if it's a minister, when we do ministers meeting, it's the expectation that they will share any major concerns that may be happening with that family.
So that's shared collectively with the full ministerial staff, including um, the 20 ministers other than yourself and the 20 and 20 deacons.
Yes. And so at both meetings, there's a report out, if you will, in terms of how the families are doing.
Okay.
So that kind of uh, helps with shepherding care. However, there is also the notion that some people they want the pastor as opposed to a deacon or minister to be responsible, and that is simply impossible. And so that's kind of one of the weaknesses of it. Teaching simile, one person can't do all the teaching, so there has to be other confident, spirit-led teachers as well. I don't necessarily see it as a weakness. I think it's a strength, really, because if other people have the spirit to get the teaching, then it gives them opportunity as well. So, although that's sort of the paradigm, it doesn't exclude other people from participation. But again, in terms of there's also persons who have that preference about teachers. And I think as long as the system is in place and they have received good teaching, people seem to be okay with the fact that pastors not doing all the teaching.
So, as far as the determination of who that a decision that you make yourself?
Uh, Partially, I think if people know what that spiritual gift is, have an interest in that, I know the membership, try to perceive what their strengths and gifts and abilities are, and sometimes they volunteer, sometimes they ask. But I'm aware of everybody who teaches. We do have what we call teachers council, whereby all of the teachers in the church meet together on a monthly basis. I'm aware of other models where teachers actually meet on a weekly basis, where the pastor, being the I guess head teacher, teach all the other teachers. But that doesn't operate. It's really kind of impractical for me to teach all the teachers in the church because of the diversity we got from youth to adults.
Now, in regards to the teachers' council that meets monthly, um, you lead those meetings.
I do, but it's also a designated coordinator of that teachers council. However, um, it's we work together.
And the designated coordinator works with you in regards to, I guess, who would be uh, maybe leading the meeting and setting the agenda for the meeting in regards to the meeting taking place on a monthly basis.
We work together to do that. I take depends upon who the coordinator is. Um, we've had several over several years, and some who have the strength in terms of administration,
Right.
and prefer to do that. There's others who prefer, that I do it. So it depends on the personality and the skill set of that person.
So you are very much aware then of the ministerial staff's recognizing their gifts and what they can actually bring to the ministry in what ways.
I do. I'm, again, I meet with the ministers as a group, and then there's individual opportunity as well. Ideally, I like to meet with them more often than I do, but again, it's not always
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that you're aware of the various strengths and gifts of the ministerial staff. That's one of the questions that we're going to get to later on. So I appreciate you going ahead and shedding some light on that now. The last question in this regards to the question as it relates to focus on specific ministry paradigms that concerns vocational ministry and recognizing vocational ministry as an operable type of ministry paradigm within the church today, universally, as well as the local context. Um, and we talked a little about this early on, but from your perspective, is vocational ministry recognized and given its proper place in the church universally, looking from that context, as well as how do you see it operational here within the local context of Chestnut?
well. I think there's certain local churches that do better than others. In the Afro American tradition, um, I don't know that vocational ministry has been. I think people have appreciated a pastor in that context,
Right.
but not look at an organization trying to have adequate resources to fulfill those various aspects of ministry. And for example, just in terms of operation of even a small, medium-sized churches, and I look at our community and probably pastors who function, who actually is not by vocation, who just simply work at the church, and probably, uh, if we assume there were, say, 10, 15 churches, I think we've got a lot of work to do in that regard in Afro American churches. Um, I think larger Anglo churches do better in terms of the resources to have, you know, or thinking we can afford
In terms of a full-time
it. Yes.
pastor,
Yes.
shepherd of the church,
Yeah.
one that's paid solely by the church,
Yeah.
and doesn't have any other outside income in the secular realm. So, in regards to the resources, and I'm sure you've thought about this quite often, and maybe you've even experienced this a little bit prior to coming here to Chestnut Grove full time. How can the African American church do a better job in securing these resources? Is it money alone, cash alone? What other type of resources do you think is needed to kind of shore up uh, that area where it would give someone like yourself or someone like me um, who's coming along feel confident that hey, the church can quote unquote take care of my financial needs.
Well, I think there's a combination. I think one has to go back to how a church look at the whole matter of giving and resources and how they teach it. It's been my experience of the 20 years that I've been here. I have been bivocational 15 out of the 20 years. So I have worked
So
another
2/3 of the time.
right. I have
So
been
you know exactly what's going on.
Exactly.
You've experienced it firsthand.
That's it. I at one point I went certain that I would ever be um, full time with benefits, and that and God have shown if we are consistent in our teaching, shown me consistent in our teaching, teach the believers that they are stewards of His resources, and people get that concept. Resources will be there to afford them, and that's been my experience. Um, perhaps I could have been full time sooner. I elected not to become full time until we had adequate facility. And so I kind of put it on the back burner. Having a job where I could actually provide for myself and my family, I chose to just stay in that job a little bit longer. And amazing to me, after we built facilities, then the giving remained at a level that it could afford to pay for staff. And as I mentioned to you, in our recent years, in the last 3 years, we actually had an associate pastor who worked full time as well. So, we are in a decent position. But if I look at statistics in terms of what I learned in school, to say that really one person can really adequately care for about 100 people. So a pastor ought to, technically ought to be responsible for 100. And if we have staff that match that, then I'm not so certain that we could, we could afford that. But maybe we could. Maybe we could. But again, it's also growing the body understanding. The risk on the other side of that, if you have too many vocational staff, then the laity don't, see that.
Can you explain that a little bit?
If we had, say, 5 pastors or ministers or whatever the title would be that we were paying, the people who volunteer, who give, who serve out of that spiritual gift, they are less likely to serve because they'll say, y'all get paid to do this.
That's it. That's it.
And so that's what happened, and that's kind of what I've experienced. Even as we bring on, as we consider additional people, you also have to be concerned about how the laity.
Well, this is a good segue into the second part of our discussion this morning that relates primarily to the focus on equipping systems. And what we mean by equipping systems, one part uh, does relate to how the church grows. And as as both of us know, in the Great Commission in Matthew 20:19, Christ gave the charge to the disciples to go out and make disciples of all nations, inclusive. And so, in with that understanding and with that charge from Matthew 28:19, what would you say are some of the major paradigms in operation for making disciples here at Chestnut Grove? Because as the as as I see it, as the church grows, um, from the fundamental scriptural teaching that you mentioned, uh, people have a deeper level of understanding of their own personal relationship with Christ and what He has done for them and their families, and they can relate to that. And if they can see that, then I think they'd be more apt to also contribute to the growth of the church, not just in serving, but also monetarily. So, what are your thoughts on
Well, there are two things that I refer back to that happens in this church that have evolved and kind of happened through the strategic planning process. Um, I mentioned the areas that we have, or maybe I did mention those areas: discipleship, fellowship, evangelism, worship, ministry, and administration. Those are the areas of whereby we have some concrete goals
that?
that has been established. And goals being established, then we have strategies to carry out the goals. Now, now in the area of discipleship, we really have two major things that have evolved in that area. One is sort of how we look at the teaching program. And I'm pleased to say that we've adopted um, a curriculum. We actually have two sort of study programs in the church. We what I call Bible study, and then what we call church school or Sunday school. In Bible study, we adopted Bill Bright 10 Steps to Christian Maturity. You may know that ministry. Um, each one of the steps equates to a lesson, a book, and it deals with the basics, starting with the uniqueness of Jesus, the Christian adventure, um, the abundant life, prayer, the Holy Spirit, spiritual gifts, a survey of Old Testament, survey New Testament. So I believe that people go through that. Giving is one of the as well. If people go through every step, study, uh, seriously study, uh, it's been my experience that you will be mature. You will have a foundation to be a follower of Christ. And after that period of time, then hopefully you will also discern what your spiritual gift is. So that's really uh, it's sometimes challenging for us to stay to walk through it. But for those people who do walk through it systematically over time, they will mature. So that's what helps us. Uh, and the other thing that helps us is we have something we call discipleship counselors. It's actually a ministry. It's a group of people who, when people come, when we open the doors of the church, people respond. We don't accept them into membership right away. We hear have them talk to a counselor. The counselor's really first thing is to help them understand what salvation is about, and help them to be certain about salvation. Talk to them about baptism, and then talk to them about church membership. I believe if you start folk off right, people start with the foundations and have good biblical understanding of what salvation is entail, what baptism is about, and then church membership, you are likely to have folks stay uh, and and grow. So those are the primary things. Now we're not quite as successful in that whole area with children and youth as we are with adults. I'm pleased about what we do with adults.
So in the, and I know you know this from being part of the corporate world as well. Uh, in business, there's a model called the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, if I'm understanding you correctly, what you just said, in regards to the youth or the children ministry, you probably wouldn't necessarily look at that so much as a weakness. You look at it more as an opportunity. And I think that's important too in identifying areas where you can grow in your operational ministry, um, because sometimes in my experience, sometimes we could be so focused on looking outwardly, we tend to overlook even those within our own flock that we can shepherd maybe a little bit more to bring them to spiritual maturity. And in doing so, that's just going to strengthen the body itself locally, where then they can go out and join everyone else who's matured to minister evangelize outside of the church. Now, you mentioned you have the discipleship counselors meet with them and talk with them about their decision to join the church. And does that follow up in a formal class after that initial conversation? And if so, how are the classes structured and how long do they go to class? And does the counselor stay with that person throughout the process? And how does the decision, how is the decision made whether or not they're actually ready to join Chestnut?
Well, it's really not a class per se.